So I love the Battletech narrative. I love the universe, but admittedly, most of the games that I play, ironically, do not follow this narrative. And what I mean by that, one of the awesome things about Battletech for me that really captures the tension of the game, and I say tension in a good way, is the fact that we have these massive war machines going head-to-head, toe-to-toe, taking and receiving massive amounts of damage, going to internals, systems failing, arms getting blown off, close combat, hand-to-hand, missiles, lasers. That narrative's interesting. And it's kind of this call of how long do you stay in the fight and when do you begin to retreat? Just how much damage can a mech take? Now, in the narrative, of course, being a mech warrior is a knight of the realm. Every single mech is very, very valuable. So if you're going to stand there and take massive amounts of punishment, there better be a very, very good reason. It's not just a merc recon mission or a scouting mission. It's like a planetary invasion and you have nowhere to go. Because admittedly, a lot of these mechs, the damage that they take could potentially take you a generation or two to repair. Or in some cases, downgrading the weapons. If you have a Marauder that takes tremendous amounts of punishment, to pay the C bills, you might have to downgrade the PPCs to large lasers. I mean, still pretty formidable from that perspective, but it changes things. But that's a very, very interesting narrative. And in today's vlog, I want us to build the tactical list and kind of keep in mind the different types of internal damage that a mech can take and how that changes the flow of the game. And in your opinion in the comments, does the weight class potentially change it? So I was playing a mission, I was playing a dragon mech, and the mission was a recon. Davian forces were hidden somewhere on the map, and I'm sending a spider mech around to recon. I've got a stinger or a wasp doing some recon, and I was pretty sure where the main Davian forces were, tactically. You can see where this is going. So I send this dragon alone, second mistake, up the left side of the table to get into good position to try and just bring some pressure to bear once the battle starts. I move past this little group of light woods, a couple of hexes, and the entire Davian force is there. Like the entire just dropship landing hidden right there. Camo nets drop, and I'm surrounded by like 5 mechs. Battle ensures this dragon survived, not only survived the mission, but took so much damage, it tied up 5 or 6 mechs for pretty much most of the game. Went to internals, arms blown off, engine hits, gyro hit, sensor hit, legs still standing. It was still standing, but actuators just blasted. I mean, just absolutely a mess. There was nothing even left to salvage. And at a certain point, it became like, I'm destroying this dragon. I am destroying this dragon because this is crazy. Even with the swinginess of Battletech here and there and the fog of war with the dice, this thing should have been dead 4 or 5 turns ago. And at the end of the battle, when we looked what it would cost to repair, it was pretty crazy. So I say that because these mechs can take a tremendous amount of punishment. But likewise, depending on the mech, you take some damage, it could go downhill pretty fast. So let's look at this idea leading in. You're taking damage, it goes to internals. Next hit, you roll to see and confirm for any criticals, and then you look and see which systems are damaged or destroyed. The first is Heatsinks. I find Heatsink hits almost a blessing to soak up that internal crit hit. On light mechs, they come stock with the fusion engine. I don't think I'm ever really worried about losing Heatsinks. And if I am, and if it goes to internals for light mechs, the way the damage transfers in on the chart, they crumble pretty fast. I mean, in theory, if I'm playing a light mech Panther, and I start taking some heatsink damage, that's going to start messing with the PPC and the tandem of the short-range missiles. But if I'm going to internals and I'm taking that type of damage, I'm probably in trouble to begin with. And having that PPC on the arm, just thinking over some past battles, when I haven't been outright destroyed, it's usually I lose an arm in the first place. So not that important on light mechs. Heavier mechs, assault mechs, in theory, they have enough heat sinks where it's manageable. So that's okay. And medium mechs, they don't necessarily have the heat load. I don't want to lose heat sinks, but that would be the first thing if I have to take it. Secondary, weapons. We see locations where, obviously, if the arm gets blown off and there's weapons in the arm, it's gone. The whole thing cores out. But while a limb or a structure is still up in the mech, if it takes damage and you lose a weapon, sometimes that can be pretty good also. If it's something like a stalker or an assault mech or a heavy mech where you have tandem, you have two, you have redundancy. If I have to lose a weapon, that's okay. If it's a weapon that's a focus of a mech, say like a longbow or an archer, losing a 20 rack is big. I mean, that just cut me down almost in half. But again, better than the alternative, which we're going to look in a second, of cooking off some missiles or ammo packs and other things from that perspective. Where it hurts to lose a weapon, I find, is on the medium class mechs or the lower heavy mechs, where you now have the tonnage to throw out some good dice, and losing a weapon, if my mech only has 3 or 4, it's going to cut down on the rate of fire. But again, depending on what else is in that location, that could be a blessing. Ammo. Now, this is the big one. This is the big one. The first time you have an ammo explosion for the lulls, I don't even calculate, really, explosion anymore. In that, if you have a full pack of ammo for a mech, right, you print out the sheet. You print out the Battletech sheet, or you look at the pack, and they pack the full complement of ammo. And you take a hit there, you crunch the numbers, you calculate it like smoking boots. There's just a pair of legs left. That's it. Your mech just explodes from the internal damage of this ammo. What sometimes you'll see is you have to do this before the game. I mean, you could dump mid-game, but before the game, making a decision to say, do I really need 200 rounds of machine gun ammo? Maybe I need 10 or 5. Do I really need all those long-range missiles? I usually take them, yes, because it's a supportive role. But if I was going into a scenario where I had picked my mechs ahead of time, taking an archer, taking a longbow, and the mission changed, or I was forced into a mission that wasn't always optimal, often what I'll do, just to be fair so we don't tailor things, is we agree on a battle value, we pick our forces ahead of time, then randomly we determine map and mission. So this way you can't say one player is necessarily weighting something to a particular mission, or you could say, you know what, look, I'm going to gamble. I'm going to roll it and really build a focused lance, and if I happen to draw a good mission and good terrain, I have that advantage. That's fair, because it could equally play out. But if I found myself in a situation of, say, having to close with a mission, I'd probably want to dump half that ammo, that long-range ammo, because my archer is going to be getting up there close. And do I want that liability? So ammo is big. This is why all energy mechs do have an advantage, because you're literally taking out that internal powder keg for them and allowing them to function much, much longer without the liabilities of ammo. Now, that's kind of a side tactica in the narrative. Why not just take all energy mechs? Why would I even want the liability of ammo, especially with something like a PPC or lasers? I mean, autocannon has some special ammo, has some advantages, but when we look at the explosion chance, let's get rid of it. There's a lot of reasons. Well, also the long-range missiles. In the Battletech narrative, different tech levels, different ways of building things, reliability. In the narrative, autocannons tend to be a lot more robust and less maintenance than lasers. That usually doesn't always play out on the tabletop game, but maybe if you're pulling in a little bit of an RPG, a role-playing aspect, it might. So ammo is big. Now we look at the center mass, the center torso, and this is where the true challenge begins, where you have gyros and you have engine hits. Gyro hits are going to make your piloting checks a lot more difficult. And depending on the mech, if you're a light mech and you're forced to move quick or move through certain scenarios, that could be really bad. If you're an assault mech taking tons of damage and you're playing with the rule to make pilot checks, that could cause you to fall. Gyro is hard. Gyro is hard to navigate. Heat on the engine, you take the engine hit, now you're generating heat. I find personally that to be very problematic, but admittedly, that's based on the mechs that I play. I regularly play energy mechs. I play an awesome. I play PPC awesome mech. I play PPC mechs. Warhammer, Marauder, and taking an engine hit really cuts in on my PPC spam. Could potentially cut in on my LRM spam. Not so much, because at that point, if you're breaching my engine on my longbow or my archers, I've got bigger problems. But depending on the mech build, that could or cannot be a problem. And again, on light mechs, engine hits don't tend to be so much of a problem. But if you're getting that engine hit, you're already internals, you're already in trouble enough as it is as a light mech. But these are important aspects where taking that engine, taking that gyro hit really starts to cut down on the efficiency of the mech. At least it's, in theory, protected in the center with the most armor. But keep in mind, you can take an engine hit or a gyro hit from behind. This is what makes rear armor so dangerous, of why you really want to protect the rear armor of your mech. Now let's move down, before we get to the head, let's move down to the limbs, the arms. You take certain damage in there, you now can't utilize your arms. I'm trying to think the last time that really came into play. For the most part, I mean, there's always exceptions, but for the most part, the arms have the least amount of armor for a mech. And they tend to get blown off and solve their own problem of taking that damage and not being able to use the arm, because they're blown off. They're gone. The legs are a little different. It's one thing to get the leg blown off, and now you're going prone and you could hop up or move around on the ground. But when you're a mech and you've taken damage where it's cutting into your movement points or it's cutting into certain pilot checks, depending on the consequences and the scenario, that could be a problem. That could. If you're a heavy or an assault mech and you're surrounded, that's challenging. That's challenging. And in certain scenarios, you will take, or I find that you can quickly take leg damage breaching to internals, trying to roll and confirm for crits more than you think. Being assault mechs, getting up there with assault mechs, kicking with assault mechs, getting kicked with assault mechs. Heavy and assault mechs can deal a lot of damage to the legs and breach things pretty fast. So I think we need to be more aware of just how quickly leg damage can pile in. And then finally, the head. Now, in my experience, the head has taken the least amount of internal damage to roll for life support, to roll for sensors. If you're playing with the optional rules, to roll for potential ejection, that aspect of it, simply because that has the least amount of armor. And if you take a head hit, usually, unless you get hit with like machine guns or something light, usually you take that first head hit and the head soaks at the armor and the second one blows it off. Very, very rare that I've played that I've taken head, although, look, I can think of one quite prominent in my mind playing an awesome again about midway through the game. Still had a lot of armor on, still had the PPCs up, took a headshot, took like 2 headshots. I think it was a large laser and something else. And it was against clans, of course. And my sensors went out. So now that's a big problem. That's a problem on an assault mech PPC's range, where now I'm stacking, I think it was +2 or is it +4? I'll have to check that. But you're stacking that just because now I'm back to iron sights trying to shoot this thing. And of course, clans are moving fast. I'm trying to move. Suddenly it was very, very problematic. So certain scenarios with the head could make it harder to hit with your sensors, could kill your pilot outright with the life support. But again, I find that to be pretty rare because chances are the head's blown off anyway. So going to internals, understanding just how much you can push your mech, push your machine, even if it's against the narrative. We probably should force withdraw. Or understanding, hey, I took some internals. I've got racks and racks of LRMs open to the wind now. Maybe I want to withdraw, or maybe I want to be aware that I can't really push this that much further.